The money one. This is the one I think that everyone waits for, which last year was really fun to do because it had been a really good year. This year, not so fun. In the interest of being transparent, and I think it's just interesting for people trying to get into the sport, people thinking about whether it might work or what they need to do to make it work. Yeah, I think it's always good to kind of share the reality of what it's like to try and be a pro triathlete, especially when you've had a shit year of being injured and not really done any racing. So. What are the ground rules? Yeah, so a few things to take into consideration that are probably different for me than they are for other people. I don't currently pay for my coaching because I coach for Will, so he's taking a cut of my coaching. So that's kind of how that arrangement works, which is very different to a lot of pro athletes who pay monthly and probably a proportion of prize money, although Will wouldn't have been doing well out of that this year. What else? I'm not including my coaching income as part of this because for me that's like another job that I'm working, just in the same way that I'm not including my Lloyd's work income because for me that's a separate job. So this is just the like pure triathlon stuff. I've also been really lucky this year in that I've had quite a lot of financial help from one of the guys that I coach. I will talk through that in the basically that was most of Kona that got kind of paid for. So that helped a lot, but what I've done for the sake of this is highlighted what the costs might have been. Although basically if he hadn't helped pay for it, I wouldn't have gone for as long as I went. So, but I've tried to kind of highlight what might it have cost to try and make it a kind of more fair overview of what it would be. Yeah, so I guess, yeah, because of the help I had with Kona, that also meant it was easier for Jack to come out, and Indy, to be fair, because we weren't paying for the accommodation. So from a general how that whole Kona setup was, made a big difference. But yeah, meant Jack could get more content so we could then do more YouTube stuff, which also helps overall. I've kept the YouTube money and then the kind of what I paid Jack separate as well. So like I've included the YouTube money as income and then what I pay Jack and also the percentage that he gets from YouTube as a separate, like what I paid for content. I think that's all the ground rules. Clear as mud, yeah. So not complicated at all, keeping it super simple. And then I guess also interesting from a comparison to last year. So last year was obviously quite a good year from a performance-wise. So I am running the year from January to December. So because of that, I have made a couple of assumptions for the sake of this video, as in like I've not had my December YouTube money yet, and I've not had the exact Kona prize money yet, but I know roughly what it'll be based off what the tax is. Yeah, I'm not doing it off the British tax year. I'm doing it off January to December. So yeah, 2022, good year. Got a 5th at World Champs and also won an Ironman, so quite good year. So the total that I made in 2022 was £87,171.50. Good year. And the split of that, you can obviously go back and watch my last year video. I can put a link in. But you know, the split of that, like a big proportion of that was prize money and podium bonuses, like pretty much 50k. Sponsorship was around 15 grand, YouTube almost a grand. Sold quite a lot of kit for nearly 10 grand and got the PTO bonus at the end of the year for 8.5 grand. Pretty good. Pounds. I'm British, I'm talking in pounds. There are also, because of some of the income that I get, there is some conversion of that, so obviously there could be some differences depending on when the exchange rate is. But so yeah, so last year, good year. I spent quite a lot of money. Yeah, so last year I spent about £28,500. Again, quite a big chunk of that is sort of flights. I was also lucky last year in that quite a lot of accommodation for the long trips was paid for, and they're like bike service, normal kind of costs. Physio was also quite a big cost. But yeah, so 2023, I'm gonna go through the costs first, because you know, let's start with the depressing ones. I spent more than I did last year. Probably not that much of a surprise given the month I spent in Kona. But yeah, I think I spent a bit less on bike services, just I was better with my bikes. I spent much more on swimming. Both from a coaching perspective, so I paid quite a lot for the front pack swim coaching and then pool costs as well. So swimming I've spent about £3,200 on, bike services about £1,000. General kit that I've bought, that's been about 2,360 quid. And again, that's stuff from like trainers to bike parts to clothes, basically anything that I don't have sponsors on, which is quite a lot. So probably like tyres is probably one of my biggest expenses. So any good tyre sponsors out there, hit me up. I've spent quite a lot on physio and I guess generally trying to look after my body, which hasn't paid off that well this year. But I've spent sort of £1,920 on physio. Race entry, I've obviously paid for my pro licence, so that's £991 this year, quite expensive. And then other race entries, this includes the Ibiza long course and quite a few of the gravel races that I did, so that was £632. What else have I paid for? I've got some travel insurance, £247. That actually paid off last year when I had to cancel my Canada flights quite late, so like for me that's a worthwhile cost. Gym, I've spent about £1,500 on that. So the gym membership I've mainly had to do some of the extra swimming when I'm doing stuff that's not squad swims. Travel costs, obviously the big ones. So accommodation has been pretty much £2,000, so that's on this, and Kona I've kept separate, so this is other accommodation for races and training camps. Car hire, about £1,380. Flights, about £7,100. That was because I treated myself to a couple of premium economies. To be honest, often the difference between that is like maybe a few hundred quid, which by the time you've paid for a bike on normal economy actually pays off.
It's not the legroom.
It's not the legroom. I don't need the legroom. Yeah, parking, 200 quid, taxis and shuttles, about 430 quid. And then Kona is the big one. So the accommodation, I've like split what the cost was as if we were sharing, although as I said, it wouldn't have been that because none of us could have afforded it. But it would have been about £2,500. And then food in Kona, because it's so ridiculous, another like £2,500. So the Kona trip was very expensive, as we all know. And then my other big cost for the year has been content. So this year, because I was getting some actual cash sponsorship, a bit like last year, and because of what sort of Jack and I are trying to do, I've been paying Jack a monthly retainer for the content. It's not very much, but it's something. And there was also some specific content that I paid him for in, I think it was March, for some of the sort of brands that I was doing stuff with that it kind of ended up on me. So content this year is going to be about £5,300 by the end of the year. So my total costs this year have been £33,533.52. So yeah, about £5,000 more than last year. So then, did I make any money? Well, I haven't made much money from the actual kind of sport, if that makes sense. So prize money, I only won prize money at Kona and a little bit at ZLMC. So my prize money, by the time it's been taxed and converted, was £4,204.90. I actually made much more this year from YouTube, which, as I said, part of why Jack has had quite a lot more money from me than usual is because I've been giving him that percentage from YouTube. So I made £1,775.68 from YouTube, but as I said, a portion of that has gone to Jack and is included in the content. I've done a bit of kit sale, but not as much as last year, so £1,120 from kit sale. And then the thing that's kept me marginally in the black, I'm really lucky that I've got some good sponsor contracts that have carried on. So people that still believe in me, which is nice and needed. So my total from sponsor contracts this year has been £33,798. Again, that's an odd number because of some of the conversion from dollars and euros. So total income has been £40,899.40, bringing me to a grand total of about £7,000, which is why I have other jobs. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to afford to eat or do anything. So yeah, I guess that's the reality of a year where I haven't really been able to race very much or to my potential. I guess Mexico was quite an expensive trip to come back with nothing. I think probably the bigger kind of reality of a year like this is a lot of my contracts were up for renewal this year. And after a year like this, it makes it quite hard trying to go in and pitch yourself at the same or more value. I'm not really counting Kona as a very good race. I like the reality is, right, compared to the expectations of what I had for this year, compared to the reality, like sure, Kona was solid, but it's just, I know I can do better than that. So for me, it's still like, it's not like a successful race. I finished it. It compared like off the training that I did, fine, but yeah, so I guess the reality has been, it's been some quite hard, for me, conversations to have with people to try and negotiate stuff for next year based off basically what I see as like zero results. So all the people renewing are basically doing it based off the fact they see some potential, which is nice. And it's nice to know that most of the brands I've been working with can kind of see that longer term view and like they want to have those long-term relationships. So, so far I've not had any negative conversations, which is reassuring. But again, the reality is I probably need to actually have a good year next year. Otherwise I'll be in a different situation at the end of the year. Yeah, hopefully that gives good insight. Yeah. Enjoy. Triathlon is not the sport to make millions unless you're at the top.
Like, share, subscribe.
Yes. Give me some more YouTube money.